A machine invented more than 140 years ago still runs most power plants today. But what if that machine is finally getting replaced? China just switched on the world's first commercial supercritical CO2 turbine, and the numbers coming out of it are turning a lot of heads. In December, the China National Nuclear Corporation revealed that a new supercritical CO2 turbine had been connected to the power grid. Instead of a giant nuclear plant, the system was installed in a steel factory in Jiangsu. Steel production releases massive amounts of waste heat, and much of it usually goes unused. The project, called Brayton 1, uses two 15-megawatt turbines to convert that heat into electricity. Reports say replacing the old steam turbine improved efficiency by more than 85%. It also produces over 50% more power from the same heat source. The system is also reported to be about 50% smaller than a traditional steam turbine setup. Smaller equipment means less space, materials, and construction cost. Because of this upgrade, the factory could generate more than 70 million kilowatt-hours of electricity each year. That amount of power can supply thousands of homes annually. The plant may also earn roughly $4.3 million in extra revenue from energy that was previously wasted. Turning lost industrial heat into electricity is the main reason this project is gaining global attention. To understand the turbine, the idea of a supercritical fluid must be explained first. Normally, substances exist as either a liquid or a gas, changing state with temperature. Water becomes steam when heated and returns to liquid when cooled. But at certain temperature and pressure conditions, the boundary between gas and liquid disappears. Scientists call this unusual condition supercritical. In this state, the substance flows like a gas but keeps the density of a liquid. This rare combination is extremely useful for energy systems. This phenomenon was discovered in the early 1800s by Baron Charles Cagniard de la Tour during fluid experiments. When the pressure and temperature crossed a certain limit, the liquid and gas phases merged together. In that state, molecules move freely like a gas, yet remain tightly packed like a liquid. That means more mass flows through a turbine even with a small volume. More moving mass means more momentum hitting turbine blades, and that ultimately leads to higher electricity generation. At first, it might seem easier to use water, since traditional plants already use steam turbines. But under extreme conditions, water becomes very chemically reactive. It dissolves minerals easily, speeds up corrosion, and slowly damages metal components. When water reaches supercritical conditions, these reactions become even stronger. Protective oxide layers on metals can dissolve, exposing surfaces to corrosion and structural damage. Over time, this weakens pipes, turbines, and other equipment. That makes water less ideal for this new turbine design. Carbon dioxide behaves very differently in these environments. Supercritical CO2 is far more chemically stable and does not trigger the same corrosion reactions. Another major advantage is its critical point. Water becomes supercritical at about 374 degrees Celsius and 22 megapascals, which are extremely harsh conditions. CO2 reaches that state at only 31 degrees Celsius and 7 megapascals, which is much easier to manage. Once it crosses that point, CO2 becomes dense like a liquid but flows like a gas. That property makes it very effective for turbine systems. Most of these systems operate using a closed Brayton cycle, where carbon dioxide moves continuously in a loop. The process begins with CO2 at around 30 degrees Celsius, just below its critical temperature. At this stage, the gas is already relatively dense. It then enters a compressor, where pressure increases to roughly 20 megapascals. Because the fluid is dense, the compressor requires much less energy compared with normal gas turbines. In many cases, the compressor work is less than 1/3 of conventional systems. That efficiency advantage is one reason this technology is attractive. After compression, the CO2 passes through a recuperator, which recycles heat from the turbine exhaust and improves efficiency. The gas may already reach about 300 degrees Celsius before entering the main heater, where the temperature rises above 700 degrees Celsius. Inside the turbine, the high-pressure CO2 expands rapidly, spinning blades connected to a generator to produce electricity. Because CO2 is denser than steam, the turbine can be much smaller while producing similar power. However, operating at extreme temperatures and pressures creates major challenges, so turbines rely on nickel-based superalloys like Inconel to prevent creep and material failure. However, supercritical CO2 introduces another problem called carburization. At high temperatures, carbon atoms can slowly diffuse into the metal structure. This forms brittle carbide compounds along the grain boundaries of the alloy. Over time, the metal becomes weaker and more prone to cracking. Engineers are working on improved alloys that resist this process, but long-term reliability data for 20 or 30 years of operation is still limited. On top of that, these advanced materials are extremely expensive and difficult to manufacture. A key component in these turbines is the recuperator, which acts as a highly efficient heat exchanger. Its job is to transfer heat from the turbine exhaust back into the compressed CO2 before reheating. For the system to reach high efficiency, it must recover more than 90% of the heat energy. That is extremely demanding because the equipment must handle very high temperature and pressure. The heat transfer walls must also remain very thin to move energy efficiently. Designing such equipment is a major engineering challenge. Many modern systems use printed circuit heat exchangers to achieve this performance. These devices contain thousands of tiny etched channels inside stacked metal plates. The plates are then diffusion bonded together into a solid block. This creates a compact structure capable of transferring large amounts of heat. However, once the plates are fused together, the inside becomes very difficult to inspect or repair. If cracks develop inside the unit while operating at extreme pressure, the entire component may need replacement. A big advantage of supercritical CO2 turbines is their compact size. But smaller turbines must spin at extremely high speeds to generate the same power. Rotating shafts can reach tens of thousands of revolutions per minute. At those speeds, even small friction forces create large amounts of heat. Traditional oil-lubricated bearings struggle to survive in these conditions. The lubricant can break down, which increases the risk of overheating. That means engineers must design new bearing technologies for these turbines. One solution is the use of magnetic bearings, which hold the shaft using magnetic fields instead of physical contact. Because there is no contact, friction is almost completely eliminated. However, magnetic bearings require continuous electrical power to operate. If power fails, backup bearings must immediately take over to protect the turbine. Some systems also use fluid-supported bearings, where the shaft floats on pressurized fluid. These technologies show promise, but are still relatively new in commercial power plants. The Brayton 1 turbine is an important real-world test for this technology. If it runs reliably, it shows progress in materials science, manufacturing precision, and system integration. Installing it in a steel plant waste heat system provides a low-risk testing environment where engineers can study real performance. Data from this project will help determine whether supercritical CO2 turbines can eventually move into nuclear, solar thermal, or fossil fuel power plants. There is an interesting twist behind this energy breakthrough. Most power plants still use the Rankine cycle from 1859, while the new turbines rely on the Brayton cycle developed in 1872. After more than 150 years, the upgrade is technically only 13 years newer. What truly enables these turbines today is progress in metallurgy, precision engineering, and high-temperature materials. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.